David Martinez was not what you call an exciting person. He worked as an architect, lived alone in a small apartment, and his biggest thrill was trying a new pizza place on weekends. His life was as predictable as clockwork. Wake up at 7. Coffee, work, home, sleep, repeat. Nothing ever surprised him anymore. That Tuesday night started like any other. David had finished watching his favorite show, brushed his teeth, and fallen asleep by 11:30. He was a deep sleeper, the kind who could sleep through thunderstorms and fire alarms. His neighbors often joked that a marching band could parade through his bedroom and he wouldn't wake up. But at exactly 3:47 in the morning, something different happened. A soft, gentle blue light began filling his room, like moonlight, but warmer and more alive. The light wasn't harsh or blinding. It was peaceful, almost like being underwater in a calm ocean. David stirred in his sleep, his mind slowly climbing out of dreams about building bridges and designing houses. As his eyes opened, he expected to see his familiar ceiling or maybe light from a passing car. Instead, he saw something that made his heart skip several beats. There was someone sitting at the foot of his bed. David's first instinct was to scream or jump up, but something about the figure made him freeze. It wasn't fear exactly, it was more like seeing something so beautiful and impossible that his brain couldn't process it properly. The person sitting there was clearly a woman, but unlike any woman he had ever seen. She was tall and graceful, sitting with perfect posture as if she was floating rather than sitting. Her skin seemed to glow from within, like she had captured starlight and it was shining through her. The glow wasn't bright enough to hurt his eyes, but it lit up the whole room with that soft blue light. Her hair was long and silver, moving gently as if there was a breeze in the room, though David knew his windows were closed. But her eyes were what really caught his attention. They were large and dark, almost black, but when he looked into them, he could swear he saw tiny points of light, like looking at the night sky. They were kind eyes, patient and understanding, nothing threatening about them. David tried to speak, but only managed a small croaking sound. His mouth felt dry and his mind was racing with questions. Was he dreaming? Was this some kind of elaborate prank? Had someone broken into his apartment? The woman smiled then, and her smile was warm and reassuring. When she spoke, her voice was unlike anything David had ever heard. It sounded perfectly normal, speaking clear English. But there was something musical about it, like hearing a beautiful song and regular speech at the same time. "Hello, David," she said softly. "Please don't be afraid. I know this is very strange for you." David sat up slowly, pulling his blanket up to his chest like a shield. Who are you? How did you get in here? How do you know my name?" The woman remained calm, her hands folded peacefully in her lap. "My name is Zara. I come from very far away, farther than you might imagine. I've been watching your world for some time now, and I've been learning about your people. You have many wonderful qualities." "Watching our world," David repeated, his voice getting stronger as the initial shock wore off. "What do you mean? Are you some kind of spy?" Zara tilted her head slightly, considering his question. "Not a spy, exactly. More like a student. I've been studying your species because my people need help, and we believe humans might be able to provide it." David looked around his room, half expecting to see cameras or other people hiding in the corners. Everything looked normal except for the glowing woman sitting on his bed. His alarm clock still showed the time. His clothes were still scattered on the chair where he'd left them. His water glass was still on the nightstand. "This is crazy," he muttered to himself. "I'm talking to a glowing person in my bedroom at 4 in the morning. I must be having the most realistic dream of my life." Zara reached out slowly, giving David plenty of time to pull away if he wanted to. When he didn't move, she gently touched his hand. Her touch was warm and tingly, like touching smooth stone that had been sitting in sunlight all day. "You're not dreaming, David," she said kindly. "I know this is overwhelming. Most people would be much more frightened than you are. That's actually one of the reasons I chose you." "Chose me?" David stared at her. "Chose me for what?" "I'll explain everything, but first, let me show you something that might help you believe this is real." David noticed a small scar on his hand where he cut himself while cooking the week before. It was healing but still visible. Zara placed her finger gently over the scar, and David felt that warm, tingling sensation again. When she lifted her finger, the scar was completely gone. The skin was perfect, as if he'd never been hurt at all. David stared at his hand in amazement, turning it over and examining where the cut had been. How did you do that? My people have learned to work with the body's natural healing processes. Zara explained. We can encourage cells to repair themselves much faster than they normally would. It's not magic, it's just advanced science. Advanced science, David repeated slowly. So you're saying you're not from Earth? That's correct. I come from a planet that orbits a star you call Kepler 442. It's about 1,200 light years from here. David felt dizzy. He was having a conversation about space travel and alien planets while sitting in his pajamas at 4 in the morning. Part of his mind was screaming that this couldn't be real, but the evidence was right in front of him. His hand was healed, the woman was glowing, and she clearly wasn't human despite looking mostly like one. Why are you here? He asked finally. Why in my bedroom, and why me specifically? Zara's expression became more serious. My planet is dying, David. Our sun is getting old and weak, and our world is slowly becoming too cold to support life. My people are facing extinction unless we can find a new home or a way to save ourselves. She waved her hand, and suddenly the air above David's bed filled with images, not on a screen, but floating in the space like a three-dimensional movie. He saw a beautiful world with crystal-like buildings that reached toward the sky, gardens that seemed to float in the air, and people who looked like Zara moving gracefully through cities that looked like something from a dream. This is my home, Zara said sadly, or it was. Now look, the images changed, showing the same beautiful world but darker and colder. Ice covered the floating gardens, and the crystal buildings stood empty. David could see massive ships in the sky, filled with people leaving their dying world. We've been searching the galaxy for a place where we can survive, Zara continued. Earth is one of the few planets that could support us, but we don't want to take it by force. We want to find a way to live peacefully alongside humans, David. Watch the floating images with fascination and growing sadness. That's terrible. I'm sorry about your world, but I still don't understand why you're here, in my room, talking to me. Zara made the images disappear with another wave of her hand. Because we've discovered something amazing, David. Something that could save both our species and yours. But I need to ask for your help, and what I'm going to ask will change your life forever. The room fell quiet except for the sound of David's heartbeat, which seemed incredibly loud. He looked at this beautiful, glowing woman who claimed to be from another world, who had healed his hand and shown him images of dying planets and refugee spaceships. Everything logical in his mind told him this was impossible, but everything he had experienced in the last few minutes told him it was real. What kind of help? He asked quietly. Zara smiled again, but this time there was something hopeful in her expression. I'll return tomorrow night to explain everything properly. You need time to process what you've learned tonight. But David, what I'm going to propose to you will be the most important decision any human has ever been asked to make. Before David could ask more questions, Zara stood up gracefully. The blue glow around her began to get brighter. Wait, David called out. Don't go yet. I have so many questions, and I'll answer them all tomorrow, Zara promised. But for now, you need to rest and think about what you've seen. Tomorrow night, I'll tell you how you can help save the worlds. The blue light grew, so bright that David had to close his eyes. When he opened them again, Zara was gone. His room looked completely normal. No glow, no floating images, no beautiful alien woman. For a moment, David wondered if he really had been dreaming. Then, he looked at his hand. The scar was still gone. David didn't sleep for the rest of the night. David spent the entire next day in a daze. He called in sick to work, which was something he never did. His boss probably thought he was dying or something. But David couldn't imagine sitting at his desk drawing building plans while his mind was spinning with thoughts of glowing alien women and dying planets. He kept looking at his hand every few minutes, checking to make sure the scar was still gone. It was, every time he confirmed it, his heart would skip a beat. This really had happened. A woman from another planet had sat on his bed, healed his cut, and promised to return tonight with some kind of life-changing proposal. David tried to go about his normal routine, but nothing felt normal anymore. His morning coffee tasted different. The news on TV seemed pointless compared to what he had learned. Even his favorite sandwich from the deli down the street felt like cardboard in his mouth. How could he care about traffic reports and weather forecasts when there were refugee ships floating in space around a dying planet as evening approached? David found himself pacing around his apartment like a caged animal. He had cleaned everything twice, changed his clothes 3 times, and checked the locks on his door at least 10 times. Not that locks would stop someone who could appear and disappear in a blue glow, but it made him feel slightly more in control. At exactly 9:30, the blue light began filling his living room. David had decided to wait there instead of his bedroom, thinking it might feel less strange. He was wrong. Watching someone materialize from thin air in your living room was just as mind-bending as finding them on your bed. Zara appeared gradually, like someone slowly turning up the brightness on a lamp, first just an outline of light, then more solid, until she was standing there as real as his coffee table. She was wearing something that looked like a flowing dress made of silver fabric that seemed to move on its own. "Hello again, David," she said with that same warm smile. "How are you feeling today?" Confused, David answered honestly, and a little scared, and excited, and about 50 other emotions I don't have names for. Zara nodded understandingly. "That's completely normal. Yesterday was a lot to process. May I sit down?" David gestured toward his couch. "Of course. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee? I don't know what alien people drink. Actually, I would love to try coffee," Zara said, settling onto his couch with that same graceful movement. "We don't have anything like it on my world." David went to his kitchen, grateful for something normal to do with his hands, while the coffee brewed. He kept glancing back at Zara. She was looking around his apartment with curiosity, examining his books, his small collection of model buildings, the photos on his walls. "You built all these?" she asked, pointing to his architectural drawings that were scattered on his dining table. "Well, I designed them. Other people actually build them," David explained, bringing over 2 cups of coffee. "I'm an architect. I design buildings, houses, offices, that kind of thing." Zara accepted the cup carefully and took a small sip. Her eyes widened with surprise and delight. "This is wonderful. It's warm and bitter and energizing all at once. What an amazing discovery your people have made." David couldn't help but smile. "We didn't exactly discover it. We just learned how to prepare it from a plant. But I'm glad you like it." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, sipping coffee. David found it surreal that he was having a normal conversation with someone from another planet, but also strangely peaceful. Zara had a calming presence that made even this impossible situation feel manageable. "You said you had a proposal for me," David finally said. "Something that would change my life forever." Zara's expression grew serious. She set down her coffee cup and turned to face him fully. "Yes, what I'm about to tell you will sound incredible, but everything I say is true. My people have been studying humans for several months now, learning about your biology, your culture, your capabilities." "That sounds kind of invasive," David said, feeling a little uncomfortable. "We've been very careful not to interfere or cause harm," Zara assured him. "We observe from a distance, study your public information, analyze samples of your atmosphere, and plant life. We would never hurt anyone or invade anyone's privacy." "Okay," David said slowly. "But why study us at all?" Zara took a deep breath. "Because we've made an incredible discovery. Human DNA is remarkably similar to ours, more similar than we've ever found with any other species in the galaxy." "Do you understand what this means?" David shook his head. Biology had never been his strong subject. "It means that humans and my people," Beketh Maran, could potentially have children together. Hybrid offspring that could survive on both our worlds. David nearly choked on his coffee. Wait, what? Children? Together? Are you talking about? I'm talking about a partnership, David, between your species and mine. Not just friendship or trade agreements, but actual family bonds. Children who are part human and part Kethmirian. David's mind reeled. But that's impossible. You're from another planet. You're not even the same species. Zara waved her hand, and those floating images appeared again. This time, David saw scientific diagrams that looked like DNA structures, charts comparing human and Kethmirian biology, and what looked like medical data. Our scientists have run thousands of simulations, Zara explained. The genetic compatibility is real, with some minor medical assistance. Human Kethmirian partnerships could produce healthy, talented children who inherit the best qualities of both species. This is insane, David muttered, staring at the floating data. You're talking about interplanetary marriage and alien babies. I know it sounds overwhelming, Zara said gently, but think about what it could mean. Your people could gain access to our technology, our knowledge, our long lifespans. We could learn from your creativity, your adaptability, your incredible ability to solve problems under pressure. The images changed again, showing beautiful cities that seemed to blend human architecture with Kethmirian crystal structures. David saw children playing, some that looked human, some that looked like Zara, and some that seemed to be a beautiful mixture of both. These are projections of what our joined civilizations could create, Zara continued. Cities that are both practical and beautiful. Technology that serves life instead of destroying it. Art and music and literature that combines the best of both worlds. David set down his coffee cup with shaking hands. Why are you showing me this? Why me specifically? Because we need volunteers, David. Humans who are willing to be the first to try this partnership. And you have qualities that make you an ideal candidate. What qualities? David asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. You're intelligent but not arrogant. You're creative but also practical. You're kind and patient, which our scientists believe are crucial traits for successful partnerships. And Zara hesitated. And what? And you're alone. No family depending on you. No romantic attachments that would be hurt by your decision. You have the freedom to choose a completely different life. David felt a strange mix of flattery and loneliness. It was true. He had no close family. No girlfriend, no children. His life was his own to change if he wanted to. But hearing it said out loud made him realize how empty his existence had become. What exactly are you asking me to do? He said quietly. Zara leaned forward, her dark eyes intense and hopeful. I'm asking you to come with me to my world, to undergo the medical procedures that would allow us to have children together, to help establish the first human Kethmirian colony and prove that our species can live together in peace. You're asking me to leave Earth forever. Not forever, eventually. There would be regular travel between our worlds. But initially, yes, you would need to come to Kepler 442b and help us build a new civilization. David stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, millions of people were living their normal lives, completely unaware that representatives of an alien civilization were recruiting humans for interplanetary partnerships. The weight of the decision felt crushing. How long do I have to decide? He asked. 3 days, Zara said softly. I know it's not much time for such a huge decision, but our situation is urgent. Every day we delay, more of my people suffer on our dying world. David turned back to face her. And if I say no, then I'll thank you for listening and find someone else to ask. There are other candidates, David, but you're our first choice. What if I say yes, but change my mind later? Then you can return to Earth whenever you wish. We would never force anyone to stay against their will. They looked at each other across the room, a human architect and an alien woman, separated by space and species, but connected by an impossible opportunity. David felt like he was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down at a future he couldn't even imagine. I need to think about this, he said finally. Of course, Zara agreed, standing gracefully. I'll return tomorrow night for your answer. But David, please remember, this isn't just about you and me. This is about the future of two entire civilizations. The blue light began to surround her again. Think carefully, but also trust your heart. Sometimes the most important decisions can't be made with logic alone. And once again, she was gone, leaving David alone with the most impossible choice any human had ever faced. David didn't sleep again that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with everything Zara had told him: leave Earth, travel to another planet, help create a new civilization, have children with an alien woman. The whole thing sounded like something from a science fiction movie, except it was real and happening to him. By morning, David realized he couldn't go to work. How could he sit in meetings about bathroom renovations and parking garage designs? When he was facing the biggest decision in human history, he called his boss again, claiming he had food poisoning. It wasn't exactly a lie. His stomach had been churning all night. Instead of going to his office, David found himself at the public library. He spent hours reading everything he could find about Kepler 440b. Most of the information was basic. It was a planet about 1,200 light-years away, roughly the same size as Earth, possibly in the habitable zone of its star. Scientists thought it might have water and could potentially support life. What the articles didn't mention was that it actually did support life, and that life was now dying along with the planets. Aging son, David felt like he had secret knowledge that could change everything, but he couldn't tell anyone without sounding completely insane. He walked through the city streets afterward, looking at everything with new eyes. The coffee shops full of people checking their phones, the construction workers building new apartments, the children playing in parks. They all had no idea that somewhere in space, refugee ships were floating around a dying world, and that the future of two civilizations might depend on people like David making impossible choices. That evening, David cleaned his apartment obsessively. He wasn't sure why. Maybe having everything organized made him feel more in control when his whole world was spinning out of control. When Zara appeared in her soft blue glow at exactly 9:30, she found him sitting on his perfectly arranged couch, hands folded, looking like he was waiting for a job interview. "You look nervous," she observed, settling beside him with her usual grace. "I'm nervous," David admitted. "I've been thinking about what you said, and I keep going back and forth. One minute I think it's the most amazing opportunity anyone could ever have, and the next minute I think I must be losing my mind." Zara nodded understandingly. "Tell me what you're thinking. What scares you the most?" David had been hoping she would ask. He had been carrying these thoughts around all day with no one to share them with. Everything. Really? Leaving Earth forever. Never seeing another human being except in the colony you're talking about. What if I hate living on your planet? What if the medical procedures hurt? What if we can't actually have children together and this whole thing is just a big mistake? Those are all reasonable concerns, Zara said gently. Let me address them one by one. She waved her hand, and the familiar floating images appeared. This time, David saw what looked like a beautiful space station with gardens and open areas, where humans and Kethmiran were working together. This is one of our research stations, Zara explained. We've already been testing human Kethmiran cooperation on a small scale. The humans there are volunteers from your space program, who think they're participating in a long-term isolation study. They don't know about us yet, but they're proving that humans can adapt to our technology and living conditions. David watched people who looked completely normal walking through gorgeous crystal corridors, tending to plants that seemed to glow with their own light, working alongside tall, graceful figures that looked like Zara. They seem happy, David said, surprised. Our humans are remarkably adaptable, more than you give yourselves credit for. The images changed to show medical equipment that looked nothing like anything David had ever seen. As for the medical procedures, they're completely painless. We use energy fields to gradually modify cellular structure. You would feel warm and relaxed, nothing more. In the children part, Zara's expression grew soft and hopeful. Our scientists are confident it will work. We've run every simulation possible. But if for some reason it doesn't, you would still be welcome in our colony. You would still be helping to save both our peoples just by proving that cooperation is possible. David found himself leaning forward, drawn into the images and Zara's calm explanations. What would daily life be like? I mean, what would I do all day? What do you love most about your work now? Zara asked. Creating things. Designing spaces where people can live and work and be happy. Solving problems with buildings and structures. Zara smiled and waved her hand again. The images now showed incredible cities that seemed to blend human architecture. With Kethmiran crystal technology, buildings that looked both practical and magical. Structures that seemed to grow organically from the landscape while still serving clear purposes. You would help design our new world, David. Cities that have never existed before. Buildings that use both human engineering and Kethmiran energy manipulation. You would be creating the blueprint for an entirely new type of civilization. David felt his heart racing, but this time with excitement instead of fear. The architect in him was fascinated by the possibilities. Those buildings, how do they work? The ones that seem to be floating? Gravitational field manipulation combined with your people's understanding of structural engineering, neither of our species could create them alone. But together, Zara gestured at the beautiful floating structures. Together we can build things that are both impossible and inevitable. What about other humans? Would I be the only one? No. We're approaching several candidates simultaneously, if you agree. You would be part of a group of about 20 humans. Initially, more would join as the program proves successful. David felt some relief at that. The idea of being completely alone among aliens had been terrifying. Even with Zara's reassuring presence, "Can I ask you something personal?" David said. Suddenly, "Of course. Why did you volunteer for this? I mean, you're leaving your dying world, taking a huge risk with a species you barely know, possibly having children with someone completely different from your own people. That can't be easy for you either." For the first time since he met her, Zara looked vulnerable. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. "Because I have no choice," she said finally. "My younger sister died last month when our heating systems failed in her sector. My parents are on one of the refugee ships, living in conditions that would break your heart. Every day we delay, more of my people suffer or die." She looked up at David with those deep, starry eyes. "But it's more than that. I've been studying humans for months now, and I've come to genuinely admire your species. You're creative and resilient and brave in ways that my people have forgotten how to be. I think we can learn as much from you as you can from us. You really think this can work? To completely different species trying to build a life together. I think it's our only hope," Zara said simply. "But David, it has to be your choice. I can't convince you with logic or emotion or floating pictures. This decision has to come from something deeper than that." David stood up and walked to his window again, looking out at his city. His ordinary, predictable, safe city where nothing extraordinary ever happened and nothing was ever asked of him beyond showing up to work and paying his bills. "If I said yes," he said without turning around, "when will we leave?" The medical preparations would take about 6 months. During that time, you would gradually disconnect from your current life while your body adapts to the changes needed for interplanetary travel. 6 months, David repeated, "to say goodbye to everything I've ever known." "Yes, but also 6 months to prepare for everything you've never dared to dream of." David turned back to face her. Zara was watching him with an expression of hope and patience and something that might have been affection. This beautiful, intelligent being had traveled across the galaxy to sit in his ordinary living room and offer him a chance to help save 2 worlds. "I need to know something," David said. "If we do this, if we have children together and build this colony, what happens to us? I mean, to you and me personally?" Zara's glow seemed to brighten slightly. "What would you like to happen?" "I don't know yet, but I think I'd like to find out." For the first time, Zara looked genuinely surprised and pleased. "So would I, David. So would I." The blue light began to surround her again. But this time David didn't feel like she was abandoning him. She was giving him space to make the most important decision of his life. "Tomorrow night?" she asked. "Tomorrow night," David agreed. "I'll have an answer for you." After she disappeared, David sat in his quiet apartment and realized that somewhere in the last 3 days, his safe, predictable life had started to feel like a cage. And Zara wasn't just offering him a key to escape, she was offering him a chance to help build something entirely new. The question was whether he was brave enough to take it. David woke up on the 3rd day knowing exactly what he was going to do. The decision hadn't come to him in a dream or a sudden moment of clarity. It had been building slowly over the past 3 days like water filling a container drop by drop. When he opened his eyes that morning, the container was finally full. He spent the day doing strange things. He walked through his neighborhood like he was seeing it for the first time, memorizing the way the morning light hit the buildings he passed every day. He bought coffee from his usual cafe and actually talked to the barista about her life. Instead of just ordering and leaving, he sat in the park and watched people walking their dogs, children playing on swings, elderly couples feeding ducks. In the pond, everything looked different when you thought it might be the last time you'd see it. David also did practical things. He wrote letters to his few distant relatives, explaining that he was taking a long-term job overseas and wouldn't be in contact for a while. He arranged for his landlord to handle his apartment. After he left, he even wrote a resignation letter to his boss, though he wouldn't submit it for several months. As evening approached, David found himself surprisingly calm. The nervous energy that had been eating at him for 3 days was gone, replaced by something that felt like peace. He made dinner, a simple pasta dish, and ate it slowly, enjoying every bite. If Zara was right about the food on her planet being different, this might be his last Earth meal for a very long time. When the blue light began filling his living room at 9:30, David was ready. Zara appeared with her usual gentle glow, but something about her seemed different tonight, more nervous, maybe. Her smile was hopeful but tentative, like someone waiting for news that could either make or break her heart. "Hello, David," she said softly. "How are you feeling?" "Better than I have in years," David replied, and realized it was true. "I've made my decision." Zara sat down on the edge of the couch, her hands folded carefully in her lap. "Would you like to tell me?" David took a deep breath. "Yes, but first, I need to tell you some things. I need you to understand what kind of person you're getting if I say yes." "I'm listening." "I'm not brave," David began. "I've lived my entire life playing. It's safe. I chose a stable career, kept my head down, never took risks. I've never been the kind of person who jumps into adventures or changes the world. I'm ordinary." "Zara, really, really ordinary?" Zara tilted her head, studying his face. "Is that what you think?" "It's what I know. But here's the thing, maybe. Ordinary is exactly what this situation needs. Maybe you don't want someone who thinks they're a hero. Maybe you want someone who understands that this is bigger than any one person." David stood up and began pacing, the words flowing out of him, like he'd been rehearsing them for days. "I've been thinking about your people dying on that refugee ship, and about humans who have no idea we're about to make contact with another species. This isn't about me having some amazing adventure. This is about 2 civilizations that need each other to survive." He stopped pacing and looked directly at Zara. "So yes, my answer is yes, I'll come with you." The transformation in Zara's expression was immediate and beautiful. Her glow brightened, and for a moment David could swear he saw tears in those dark, starry eyes. "David," she said, standing and moving toward him, "are you absolutely certain?" "I'm certain, but I have conditions." Zara paused, looking curious rather than offended. "What conditions?" "First, I want regular communication with Earth. I know you said eventually there would be travel between worlds, but I need to know that humans here will be told the truth about what's happening. No lies, no cover stories. If this works, people deserve to know." "That's already part of our plan," Zara assured him. "Once the first colony is established successfully, we intend to make formal contact with your world leaders. Second, I want protection for Earth. I know you said your people don't want to take over, but I need guarantees, written agreements. Whatever your version of contracts looks like." Zara nodded seriously. The Kethmirian Council has already prepared such agreements. We want partners, not subjects. And third, David hesitated, then decided to be completely honest. I want to know that you chose me for the right reasons, not just because I'm alone and available, but because you actually think we could work together, as partners, as. He struggled to find the words. As mates? Zara finished gently. Yeah, as mates. Zara moved closer to him, and David could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. David, I've observed hundreds of humans during our study period. I chose you not because you were convenient, but because everything about you suggested you would be an ideal partner for building something new. She reached out and took his hands in hers. Her touch was warm and tingly, just like before, but this time it felt different, more personal. You're thoughtful and careful, but not afraid to act when something matters. You're creative but practical. You're kind without being weak. And she paused, looking almost shy, and I find myself genuinely looking forward to our conversations. Each night, I want to learn more about how your mind works. David felt his heart racing, but in a good way this time. I feel the same way about you. They stood there for a moment, holding hands in the soft blue glow. Two beings from different worlds who had somehow found each other across the vastness of space. So what happens now? David asked. Now the real work begins, Zara replied. The medical preparations will start immediately. My ship has equipment that can begin the genetic modifications tonight. If you're ready, tonight? David felt a flutter of nervousness. How does it work? Zara waved her free hand, and new images appeared in the air. David saw what looked like a peaceful medical facility with beds surrounded by soft light and floating instruments. That didn't look threatening at all. You would lie down, and we would surround you with energy fields that gradually modify your cellular structure. You would feel warm and relaxed, nothing more. The process takes about 6 hours, but you would sleep through most of it, and when I wake up, you would be exactly the same, except your body would be able to process different atmospheric mixtures and adapt to different gravitational fields. Think of it as getting a biological upgrade that makes you more versatile. David looked at the images of people sleeping peacefully while soft light swirled around them. It looked more like a spa treatment than surgery. What about my job? My apartment? I can't just disappear overnight. You won't. The modifications happen gradually over 6 months. You would continue your normal life, but you would need to come to our ship every few weeks for additional treatments. To everyone else, it would look like you're just taking occasional overnight trips. And after 6 months, you would be ready for interplanetary travel. We will leave Earth together and begin the journey to our new home. David squeezed Zara's hands. Our new home. Yes, she said, smiling. Our new home. The blue light around Zara began to intensify, but this time David wasn't worried about her leaving. He knew she would be back. Are you ready to start tonight? She asked. David looked around his ordinary living room one more time, at his books and his architectural drawings and his comfortable, predictable life. Then he looked at Zara, this amazing being who had crossed the galaxy to offer him a chance to help write the future of two civilizations. I'm ready, he said. Then let's go change the universe. Zara replied. The blue light grew brighter and brighter until it filled the entire room, and David felt himself being gently lifted off his feet. For the first time in his life, he was leaving the ground, leaving the ordinary behind, and stepping into something extraordinary. As his apartment faded away around him, David realized he wasn't scared anymore. He was excited, more excited than he had ever been about anything. His real life was finally about to begin. 6 months later, David stood on the observation deck of a Kethmirian starship, watching Earth become smaller and smaller until it looked like a tiny blue marble, floating in the darkness of space. He had seen this view in movies and documentaries, but nothing had prepared him for the actual feeling of watching his home planet disappear behind him. The journey had been incredible so far. The medical treatments had gone exactly as Zara promised, painless sessions where he would lie in warm, glowing light and wake up feeling refreshed and energized. Gradually, his body had changed in ways he could barely notice. his vision became sharper, able to see colors that didn't exist before. His hearing improved until he could detect sounds that had always been there but hidden. Most amazingly, he found he could sense electromagnetic fields around him, feeling the gentle hum of the ship's engines like a comforting heartbeat. During those 6 months on Earth, David had slowly disconnected from his old life. He quit his job, explaining to his boss that he was taking a position with an international company that required extensive travel. He sold most of his belongings, keeping only a few precious items, photos of his parents, his first architectural drawing, a coffee mug from his favorite cafe. Everything else felt like it belonged to a different person living a different life. The hardest part had been the loneliness. He couldn't tell anyone the truth about what was happening to him. When friends asked about his new job, he had to lie. When his distant relatives called, he had to pretend everything was normal. Only during his visits to Zara's ship did he feel like he could be honest about the amazing changes in his life. But now, floating through space in a vessel that looked like it was made of living crystal, David felt a peace he had never experienced on Earth. The ship was beautiful beyond description, corridors that curved like natural cave systems, rooms that seemed to grow organically from the walls, gardens where plants from dozens of worlds created colors and scents that took his breath away. "Are you feeling sad?" Zara asked, joining him at the observation window. Even after 6 months, her presence still made his heart skip a beat. She had become more beautiful to him as he got to know her better, not just physically, but the way her mind worked, her gentle humor, her incredible patience with his endless questions about Kethmirian culture. "A little," David admitted. "It's strange to think I may never see Earth again from the surface. But mostly I feel excited, like I'm finally going where I belong." Zara slipped her hand into his. Over the past months, their relationship had grown from careful friendship to something deeper. They weren't just partners in an interplanetary alliance anymore. They genuinely cared about each other. David found himself looking forward to their conversations more than anything else in his day. "Would you like to meet the others?" Zara asked. "They're gathering in the main hall for dinner." David nodded eagerly. One of the best discoveries of the past few months was that he wasn't alone. 19 other humans had made the same choice he had, each paired with a Kethmirian partner. There was Jenny, a botanist from Canada who was fascinated by alien plant life. There was Ahmed, an engineer from Egypt who spent hours studying Kethmirian technology. There was Liu, an artist from China who was already creating incredible sculptures that blended human and Kethmirian aesthetics. All of them had been ordinary people living ordinary lives until Kethmirian representatives had approached them with the same impossible offer. All of them had chosen to leave everything behind for a chance to help build something entirely new. The main hall was a circular room with a domed ceiling that showed the stars streaming past as they traveled. The 20 human Kethmirian couples sat around tables that seemed to float in the air, sharing a meal that combined foods from both worlds. David had grown to love Kethmirian cuisine. It was lighter than human food, but somehow more satisfying, flavors that seemed to change as you ate them. "David," Jenny called out as he and Zara approached, "come settle an argument. Ahmed thinks the new colony should focus on industrial development first. But I say we need to establish sustainable agriculture before anything else. Why not both?" David suggested, sitting down with his plate of what looked like glowing fruit and something that tasted like the best bread he'd ever eaten. "That's the whole point of combining our skills, right? Ahmed handles the industrial side. You handle the agriculture, and I'll design cities that support both." This had become David's favorite part of the journey, the evening discussions where 20 brilliant humans and 20 wise Kethmirian planned the future of their new world. They talked about everything from building materials to education systems to art galleries. Every conversation felt like they were writing the blueprint for a civilization that had never existed before. "Speaking of cities," Zara said, activating a holographic display above their table, "would you like to see the latest designs for New Terra?" The image that appeared made everyone at nearby tables stop talking and stare. It was David's architectural vision brought to life with Kefmiran technology, a city that seemed to grow from the landscape like a living thing, buildings that spiraled toward the sky while remaining perfectly integrated with the natural environment, residential areas that floated gently above crystal gardens, workspaces that could be reconfigured instantly based on what projects people were working on. David designed the basic structure, Zara explained to the group, but we've enhanced it with gravitational field manipulation and organic building materials that literally grow into the shapes we need. It's beautiful, whispered Liu's partner, a Kefmiran artist named Kelith. It looks like a city that dreams built. David felt a warm glow of pride. This was what he had always wanted as an architect, to create spaces that didn't just house people but inspired them. On Earth, he had been limited by physics and budgets and building codes. Here, working with Kefmiran technology, he could design things that were both impossible and perfect. How long until we reach Kepler 440b? Asked Ahmed. About 18 more months, Zara replied. But we won't be landing there immediately. First, we'll establish the colony on one of the moons while we prepare the planet's surface for dual specie habitation. David had learned that Kefmiran technology could actually heal dying planets. With enough time and resources, they could stabilize Kepler 440b's sun and restore the world to its former beauty. The colony would be temporary, eventually. Both humans and Kefmiran would live on the restored planet in cities, like the one David was designing. What about Earth? Jenny asked. When will they know about us? Soon, Zara said, glancing at David. Once our colony is established and thriving, the Kefmiran Council will make formal contact with Earth's leaders. You'll all be able to return as ambassadors if you choose. David tried to imagine that moment, standing before world leaders, explaining that humans could live among the stars, that there were entire civilizations waiting to meet them. It seemed like something from a dream, but he was living it. After dinner, David and Zara walked through the ship's garden levels. These were David's favorite places, vast chambers filled with plants from dozens of worlds, creating ecosystems that had never existed naturally. The air smelled like cinnamon and rain and something sweet that had no name in any human language. Are you happy, David? Zara asked as they paused beside a fountain that seemed to be made of liquid light. David considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, he had been a lonely architect designing boring buildings for people who barely noticed his work. Now he was traveling between stars with the woman he loved, planning cities for a civilization that would bridge to worlds. I'm more than happy, he said finally. I feel like I'm finally the person I was supposed to be. Zara smiled and moved closer to him. I feel the same way. My people have a saying, sometimes the greatest journeys begin with the smallest steps. Choosing to trust you was a small step for me, but it led to the greatest journey of my life. David looked up through the transparent dome above them at the stars streaming past. Somewhere among those stars was their new home, waiting for them to arrive and begin building the future. Somewhere behind them was Earth, full of people who had no idea their world was about to change forever. Do you think it will work? David asked. This whole crazy plan? Zara took his hand and squeezed it gently. Look around you, David. 20 couples from 2 different species, working together, planning a future that seemed impossible 6 months ago. It's already working. David smiled and squeezed her hand back. She was right. They had already done the impossible part. They had proven that love and partnership could exist between beings from different worlds. Everything else was just details. As they walked back toward their quarters, David felt a sense of completeness he had never experienced before. His old life seemed like a dream he had woken up from. This was real. The starship, the mission, the woman beside him, the incredible future they were flying toward together. He was exactly where he belonged, doing exactly what he was meant to do. And the best part was, their story was just beginning.